I don't want to set the world on.
Fallout, the popular post-apocalyptic role-playing series started by Interplay in 1997, was reborn in 2008 by Bethesda. At the time, people loved and praised Fallout 3, and for good reasons. It revived a dying franchise and brought it not only to a 3D world, but to an entirely new audience, as it was the first good Fallout game to come to the consoles. The thing is, it's not 2008 anymore, and as the years have gone by, especially as different Fallout games have come out since then, public opinion has soured more, and for good reason. Primarily, Fallout 3 dumbed down a lot of the RPG mechanics people loved back then, and other games have brought it back. Fallout 3, being Bethesda's first FPS, also has gunplay that's more akin to a Nerf fight than actual gunfighting, and would be put to shame years later by Fallout 4. So where do I sit? See, I've been playing Fallout 3 for years, but unlike its younger brothers, I never actually got around to finishing it. So now that it's topical again because of the Amazon show, and because I actually wanted to finish it for once to see where I stand, come along as I look back at Fallout 3. Fallout 3's opening movie is classic, and I'm not going to waste too much time saying how great it is, as hundreds have already said it, but it sets up the world fantastically. Starting by playing the now iconic I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire by the Inkspots, and ending by explaining the world we live in. This works really well both to introduce new players to the world for the first time, and also as a way to let pre-existing fans know the changes and different ideas that Bethesda has, as Fallout 3 is pretty different in a lot of ways to the old Interplay games. After the opening movie, though, is where I'm going to start complaining. Fallout 3 is a really long, really scripted first 10 to 30 minutes or so. You will always be born and hear your mother die. You'll always have your dad explaining the most repeated quote in the game besides "war never changes" at 1. At 10, you'll have the same birthday and kill the same rad roach. At 16, actually I did do something new here by accidentally skipping the go and just choosing my special stats. I knew you could do this, but I actually wasn't trying for once, and that is funny to me. And of course at 19, you'll be woken up and forced to escape the vault. And if you're not doing your best to avoid it, you'll be forced to kill the guards. I'll be honest, I really hate this intro, and for two very different reasons. One many have spoken about, and a critique get ready to hear more about, is that it strips choice from the player. Fallout is an RPG, a role-playing game, and Fallout 1 and 2 were praised for how much they let the player choose. 3 strips a lot of that away. You can't avoid your birthday or the rad roach. Dad will always say the same quote. People want to be able to choose to maybe talk to the guards who were nothing if not friendly before, instead of killing them, but you can't, because Bethesda doesn't want you to. The next reason to me is a little bit more personal. Perhaps due to ADHD, I have a fairly short attention span, and it's not that Fallout 3's intro can't be exciting, it's that it is repetitive and it takes so long to complete. It takes so long to give the player any actual freedom that many times that I've tried to get into playing Fallout 3 again, they fizzle away because it just takes too long to get to the fun part. Having this overly scripted, overly static introduction harms the flow of the game, especially because it's never this guided ever again. It does end very well, though. The emotional peak of leaving the vault and seeing the sky for the first time is done very well. At least before you're bombarded with DLC messages and a level up screen. But anyway, now we've been let into this big open world, and this really is what Fallout 3 does best, and that is its world. Now I'm not going to pretend Fallout 3 is a masterclass in level design or world design. It's not, but the overall product, and especially the overall vibe, is very strong. Especially for its time, Fallout 3 has a very interesting world to explore. It feels alive and lived in. Cities are diverse, from the very vertical streets of Megaton to the infuriating, if at least conceptually interesting, Rivet City. You won't go to one settlement and then get it confused for another. Landscapes too differ, from the open plains on the western side of the map to the ruins of DC itself. While the textures admittedly haven't aged that great, the game is still interesting to look at. Later in the game, during my travels through Vault 87, the imagery is genuinely unsettling, and if I'd actually ever made it this far as a kid, it would probably be outright scary. But world design is one thing, and sitting atop this cliff isn't gonna get me anywhere. So let's head into Megaton to start the main story and try to find our dad. Once I got to Megaton, the big main city for most of the game, and the only one of them I actually like for any real good amount of time. Actually, that's harsh. I really like Megaton. It's by far one of my favorite cities in any of the Fallout games, from its vertical fun design and the fact that there's just an atomic bomb, an active atomic bomb, just chilling there, and a probably personal thing where most 3D Fallout game cities feel too small or underpopulated. Megaton feels the right size and the right amount of life for what it's trying to be. Here I spent my time doing 2 things. 1, deactivating the big bomb the city sits around and helping the local shopkeep and mildly insane woman, Moira Brown, with her guide. Why, you may ask? The first one is mostly just to get a house to store the stuff, even though I never actually ended up doing that, and because it's a good way to get free water. And I bothered with Moira because I wanted to get my friend for the game. Dogmeat, my little dog friend. Doing her quest isn't by any means necessary, I just think it really helps me find him. After faffing around a bit, I actually finally got back onto my path to finding Dad. The whole reason the Lone Wanderer, that's me! escaped anyway. Talking with the local barkeep gets me pointed into the direction of Galaxy News Radio because the man behind it apparently knew my dad. This means for me diving deep into the long-running streets and winding tunnels of downtown DC, and that brings with it combat, and lots of it. Combat is a really big part of any Fallout game, and especially with the really weird way the speech system works compared to literally everything else, combat is going to be the primary, and most of the time only, problem solver. Ugh, that kind of bites because combat is probably one of the things that's aged worse above all else in Fallout 3. Now, it's far from actively terrible. Replaying it for this video did show that it's a lot less bad than I had thought, but it's also far from being good. Being Bethesda's first attempt at an FPS combat, a lot of things are just weird. They're just wrong. Weapon skills are split between 5 different stats, and most infamously and annoying to me is that you can't actually aim down sights. Like sure, if you right click or hold the left trigger, it'll zoom, but the game does this by just cramming the gun into your neck. It looks bad, it doesn't actually really help you aim, and I just hate it. My biggest problem though is aiming just doesn't really ever feel like it works. It's hard to describe this feeling, but the shooting just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like the enemy is getting hit until they just magically fall over and die. That's a huge issue for a game that's at least 70% shooting. You can actually see how this affected me with how much I played using automatic weapons, because the thing is, while you can use single shot and semi-automatic weapons, and they will do more damage per hit, it doesn't matter because it just doesn't work. It's better to just throw hundreds of bullets down range and hope at least 7 connect, especially with how relatively cheap and affordable ammo is. Yeah, the shooting still doesn't feel good, but hey, at least spraying and praying, I'll probably kill whatever I was aiming at. But hey, as much as I don't love the tunnels, it's not like I actually spent that much time in them, so moving on, once I can again breathe that awful, awful wasteland air again, we meet up with the big good guys of the game, the Brotherhood of Steel, and specifically Miss Sarah Lyons of the Lion's Pride. These big dudes in big armor help me break my way through to GNR, and while a lot of hardcore fans really don't like the East Coast Brotherhood, I'm actually pretty cool with them. Yeah, they're not the angry recluses of the West Coast, but I kind of like the idea that for all intents and purposes, this rogue chapter is just chilling in the East doing its own thing. I don't know, maybe it's me, but I don't mind there being someone trying to help out in the wastes. Speaking of people helping in the wastes, Three Dog is a character that I kind of forgot exists. Look, here's the thing, I don't really listen to the in-game radio much, and I wasn't really spending time outside of the main quest due to reasons I'll talk about later, so I don't know, he's fine, he is a guy. Dogbowl and I adventure to the Museum of Technology to find a frisbee for the 3 different dogs. Again, more combat against super mutants, which isn't really any different from any other enemy with a gun, and I'm not gonna whine about them as characters, as that's more something to complain about if I ever talk about Fallout New Vegas or 1 or 2. More dead bodies and a frisbee later, I fight a large battle with a whole shit ton of super mutants to get to the Washington Monument, and honestly, yeah, this is actually a really fun fight. Something about weaving in and out of the trenches and doing my best for me and Dogboy to survive was just incredibly fun, and honestly, with how fast-paced it was, I kind of forgot how janky the combat was. Finally, Fish on the Stick and Three Dog finally actually helps me by telling where my dad is. Or where he might be. Woohoo! More walking, and to my least favorite city in Fallout 3. Rivet City. In concept, it's really cool, and I do have to commend Fallout 3 and the design team for a lot of the creativity they had with cities and settlements, and having a bunch of people huddled inside a beached aircraft carrier makes a lot of sense and is just neat. Until you realize they actually made it like a real aircraft carrier, which means they made it very crowded, very suffocating, and horribly nightmarish to deal with. We're just here to see Madison Lee, who tells us to run across the world again. Actually, to be fair, I did have fun running to Vault 112 to find my dad, mostly because I got distracted and killed my way through a slave camp, which is always just good fun. Vault 112 and Tranquility Lane exists. That is kind of everything I have to say on it. It is a neat enough idea with the psychotic doctor, but because it slows the pace down, I kind of just breeze through it to get it over with. Dad's back though, and that means we immediately go back to Hell Incarnate, and then we move back to the Rotunda for Project Purity. I'm gonna take a quick break and explain why I haven't taken a break to explain things in a while, and it's because honestly there isn't a lot left to talk about outside of the story. Most gameplay is either shooting or walking, both of which are fine on their own, but it's all that you do, and as mentioned before, there really aren't many, if any, main missions where there's some neat workaround or alternative path. So far, the most I could have done is yell at Three Dog to skip the fetch quest and activate the failsafe in Tranquility Lane like I did. Bad, it just kind of means that the game blends together if you don't specifically go out of your way to try and create something more fun. Anyway, Project Purity. Dad's goal to get clean water to everyone in the waste. What a nice dude. We get to roleplay Smart Science Man by fumbling around in the dark, and oh shit, the villains of the story haven't been introduced yet. The Enclave, like the Brotherhood, somehow made their way out east, and I like this far less than the Brotherhood for long dumb reasons that really don't matter here. The two long didn't watches, they really shouldn't exist after Fallout 2, and especially on the East Coast from what was shown before, but whatever. My bigger and more serious issue is these guys are jokes. Look, I'm wearing a mix of beaten to shit combat armor and a barely padded vault suit, and yet I am wiping the floor with these dudes in power armor easily. Like, these are the big, scary bad guys, and I'm killing them so fast, I already have half a dozen suits of power armor at the ready. Probably guess how the story goes from here if you haven't played it before. The big bads roll in, I kill so many of them, but Trenchcoat guy still gets to kill my dad. So I guess I'm sad now. No time for that definitely emotional scene to lay in. I gotta get the Scooby Gang of one actually important character and a couple entirely non-important NPCs through a tunnel with more combat. I actually just ended up leaving one just because I wanted to get it all over with. But hey, we made it to the Brotherhood of Steel's main base, the Citadel, or the real-life Pentagon. Here we are treated like the Messiah, with everyone knowing who we are immediately. Because it's Bethesda, why the hell not? I complain, but hey, they do teach me how to use power armor so I can use all the stolen equipment for once. These lovely technophiles also sent me on the last fetch quest of the game, to find the Garden of Eden Creation Kit, a pre-war kit that possibly helps us give water to the masses. This is actually pretty decently fun and where I had most of my fun, not gonna lie. I get sent to Little Lamplight, a little cave system where a bunch of orphans help raise other orphans. Problem is, they really hate adults and I really am not a kid, so to gain their trust I must save their friends from slavers. Fair enough, I hate slavers too, so going on another absolutely hilarious slaughter does kinda sound fun. Several dead slavers and 3 alive kids later, and I get to explore Vault 87, and yeah, it's one of my favorite locations. Like, to be fair, it's a labyrinthy nightmare, but it's so cool looking and the natural little pieces of storytelling are so good that I kinda just stop caring anymore. We also meet my only other companion of the game, Fox, the one kind super mutant and the one with more than at least 3 brain cells in the entire game. All in all, Vault 87 is fun, and god damn it, I've been kidnapped by the Enclave. Okay, Raven Rock, the Enclave's big secret base, and oh, the section's already over as I convince the president he's fake and lame, and I'm blending these heavily armored soldiers up with a broken shotgun I found a few hours ago. Like, genuinely, what in the world is going on here with the combat shotgun? I know it's really strong and I got like nearly 100 in my guns level, but this should not be blending people this fast, especially not these Enclave soldiers. Especially on normal difficulty. I escape right before the base blows as my new friend Fox uses a laser cannon he found. Pretty rad. Finally, I return to the Citadel and to the Brotherhood to inform them of the danger, and we roll out. And honestly, it's really anticlimactic. Sure, big robot cool and all, but people die so fast that I can't actually really do anything. And once I'm finally in the building and free from the big robot, there's like 7 or so guys. And remember, my shotgun takes them out in like 1 shot, 2 tops. This all ends with a standoff with Colonel Autumn, the big bad trenchcoat dude, last seen killing Dad. I talk him down, but honestly, screw that, and I blow his head off, because honestly, why not at this point? I offer to punch the code in, and in doing so, succumb to radiation as I pass away. Or, because I have broken steel installed, pass out for a few more weeks. And honestly, that's a story for another day. So that was my playthrough, or at least a heavily clipped note version. And honestly, yeah, I had fun. In my retelling, I've kind of ripped into Fallout 3, and to be honest, it's not a great RPG, like, at all. There's not a lot of role-playing in my game, but there's a good amount of exploring and a decent enough combat system to enjoy. See, that's where I think I've been sitting now that I've finally beaten the game. Fallout 3 is a fun game, it has a lot of enjoyable bits and bobs, and it comes together to be a pretty enjoyable, open-world action-adventure game. See, the main sin is its story. It's formulaic, since you're always born to the same parents, and it always starts with you being born, which just doesn't give you a lot of creativity. You always have to find the same dad, with the only real alternative being poisoning the watering hole at the end, a almost comedically evil thing. It doesn't give me good choices, it's just, do you want to become a savior or a sinner? And that's not that much. I don't want to just point and laugh and compare it to Fallout 1, 2, and New Vegas, partially because one day I might actually want to talk about those games and comparison matters a bit more, but also mostly because it's done to death and I get why. Fallout started with a really well-written story and a really interesting world. It let you play whatever you wanted as a character, and after 3, it went on to do that again. Fallout 4 did lose a fair bit of that, but it was still able to hold itself together by being a really strong first-person shooter RPG. Fallout 3 is kinda just stuck in a lose-lose situation. It doesn't have the fairly pretty graphics and actually really good combat Fallout 4 has, and it doesn't have the story chops 1, 2, and New Vegas have. It's just kinda there. And honestly, in 2024, that's okay. Like, maybe I would have feel more ripped off if I had paid more than maybe $5 or $10 for it, or if it had been hyped up as this amazing thing, but Fallout 3 is still a perfectly charming game, with an enjoyable world, a very fun cast of characters, and a plot good enough to get you from point A to B with maybe a couple pit stops. It's fun. You should probably still play it today.